right? Yes. So I went there, and then Gordon got sober again. He was not anonymous, by the way, and became a friend. So now in AA, you know, they have the things called the 12 steps. You've heard of that, right? Well, the fourth step is you do a rigorous inventory of your life, which is essentially what you guys are hearing now from guys and women from me. And friends wrote 5 pages, 7 pages. I wrote 500. So I cried for 450 about my father, and I got those tears out. And I highly recommend crying for all of you, or writing and crying. Get the tears out. But don't throw any of your writing out. They all told me you have to throw it out. You can't save it. I saved it and I published it. I published about 5 books. I keep publishing my story, my writings, whatever. So in any event, now I have 500 pages of immortal prose. What am I going to do with this stuff? I'm not a writer yet. So I'm taking courses at UCLA and all that. But I thought I need an editor. So I'm back in New York, and I see Norman Mailer is speaking at the Thalia. And I thought, my ego thought he'd be a good editor. So I go to the Thalia, and God arranges for there to be 1 ticket there, and it's obviously has my name on it. And I go in a snowy night, and Norman speaks and says, I'll be in the back signing books if you want to say hello or an autograph. So I go back, and like my father, who sold the insurance after a fire, I invited Norman. I wrote a note for a cheeseburger at the Lenox Hill Coffee Shop. Now, who in their right mind would do that to a Pulitzer Prize writer, but yours truly, like my father? He, following in his footsteps. So I went and did it, and to make things even stranger, he showed up. He showed up the next day at the Lenox Hill. And then he looked at my book. He said, so where is it? And I pulled it out. And he didn't start with page 1. He let it fall open like the I Ching and started in the middle. So when he left, then, as he was reading it, I started to get feelings for him. Because when you write your feelings, it's very intimate. And if somebody likes my writing, I really like that. Forget the people pleasing, I'm like yours. So I started having feelings for Norman because he liked my writing. So then when he left, he kissed me on the lips. He said, I'm coming to Hollywood in a few months. Maybe we'll get together. And sure enough, after that, he called me once a week with writing lessons till that June. This was in a January. And I would tape record them, which he gave me permission, and I later sold them to Harvard. In any event, so he comes to the Bel Air Hotel in Hollywood to promote Tough Guys Don't Dance, and I go there with my immortal prose, and he starts to edit it again. And then he says, if you want to be a writer, you have to quit acting. I'll be your mentor. And that's what happened. It went on till 1990, 1983 to 1990. I was in love with Norman Mailer, but he wasn't in love with me, unfortunately. He was not in love with anybody, least of all himself. I would take him to AAA. Remember a story? I like to get men to save them. Well, he was one high on my hit list. It's called 12 Stepping, and I took him to AA, and he actually liked it. He liked it because he he thought there was a lot of material there. Well, there certainly is. So I loved him dearly. When he'd come over, he wasn't allowed to drink around me. I wouldn't permit it. And I had rules. In other words, he'd come over, he'd give me a writing lesson, then we'd make love, and then we'd go to lunch. That went on for 9 years. So I had 9 years of writing lessons stuck around the apartment. Eventually went into a safety deposit box, eventually went to Harvard. So, but as I said, I love him dearly. So in 1990, I interviewed, sort of its history. I brought Gore Vidal, you remember him? Mm-hmm. I brought him together with Norman and did a dual interview for Esquire. And Norman is not a feminist. He said he liked my writing and all that, but he also had how do you say, was supercilious. In any event, he told me with Gore and Norman for the interview, all you have to do is turn the tape recorder on. You don't have to talk. Well, that's really insulting. So you know what I did? I snookered them. I pulled the covers out. I said, to what degree has alcohol wreaked damage in your life? Oh, Gore went like that. Well, Gore got thrown out of the White House by Jackie Kennedy because he was drunk. Norman stabbed a woman in an alcoholic blackout. But Norman's answer was, I would be dead if it weren't for alcohol due to cancer, which made no sense. It's cool. Total ridiculous. But what happened was, after the interview, which got a lot of publicity, the 60 Minutes editor, Don Hewitt, loved it. Then he ended it with me because his enablers were, what do you say, doing what do you call the rain dance around me. I had to go because I was revealing too much of Norman to the world. And they would feed him alcohol to get him to do things they wanted. That's how what an enabler does. And he died of alcoholism. But he wanted to be with me, and he chose them over me. But he was also, what's the word, entangled, ensnarled. It was an agent to publishers, 6 wives, 9 children. He was a corporation, and it killed him. It killed him. But I had to let him go. So then, but the good news, this is a catastrophe. Remember I told you the catastrophes. The good news was, guess who became my roommate? My mother. My mother moved in with me in 1990 when she was 90. She went to New York. She was living here where I live now in Timberlake. And she was my roommate for 10 years. And I loved her dearly. I got to make amends with Laura Lulu Langle Wagner. And I even made her famous. Here she is here in the Colonial at 100. For her 100th birthday, I got her picture in the paper. And I was really proud of that. The best years of my life were caring for my mother. And that's what you all remind me of when you allow me to talk to you. We would go to the ballet in New York in her wheelchair, and Baryshnikov would get us seats, and we'd sit on the best seats in the house, one Christmas after another. I'd take her to Central Park in her wheelchair for picnics. We'd ride the buses. She loved the buses. New York is terrific to the disabled and the seniors, terrific. Pennsylvania is not. So she really loved getting around New York, and then we go in the taxis. So eventually she left us in 2000, and I met a man in AA called Kenneth Gambone. He's over here. And he helped me to forget Norman, because I really did love Norman. And so I'm grateful to him for helping me forget him. But that ended too, and I gave him my dog. I had then a poodle named Sir Winston. And he met a woman who liked marijuana and ghosts, and I don't like either. So I had to let him go, and I wish him well. We're still friends. And yeah, I just got a picture of Winston the other day. It breaks my heart. I just love animals. So Ken is now somewhere in the Poconos chasing ghosts, and that's what happened to him. So I'm telling you about catastrophes and good things happening. So in 2013, good news, I have a stroke. And why was it good news? Because during the stroke, they find out I have hydrocephalus. Does anybody know what it is? I have water on the brain. So if I hadn't had the stroke, they wouldn't have seen the water on the brain. So I had to have a brain operation. Now, for somebody to cut my brain after what they did to my father, that was the toughest thing for me to allow in my life, to face. And I interviewed, I hope you all do this, 3 doctors. I went to Einstein, Penn and the Jefferson, and I chose Jefferson. And I'm happy to say it was painless. I didn't feel a thing. My ex-husband didn't take me. Someone from AA, which is how it works, took me. And when they wheeled me on the gurney into it, I'd say they were all teenagers around me in blue, you know, maybe 8 technicians. Teenagers, I thought, this is ridiculous. So I started to interview them because I was a journalist. Where are you from? They were from Japan, China, Venezuela, all over the world, these kids, and they were laughing. On top of that, they were going to cut me open. From here to here, I don't know, I have a metal plate here and a tube that runs down and drains my brain. I don't know, they're laughing. This is nothing to them. So it helped me to relax, and I ask their names, where they're from, what country. Next thing you know, I'm out, and I wake up, and the doctor whispers in my ear, there was more water there than we thought. So now it took me 2 months to walk again. I went to Bryn Mawr Hospital, or rehab, which is very good if you know it. And also what's very good is Shenandoah, which is a sleeper. Don't be fooled by their chintz and their fancy furniture. They have a good rehab department. So what I want to say is that I have a new life since 2013, because I had the stroke, which was the catastrophe. We found out I had hydrocephalus, and now I'm fine. And I'm really grateful, and I'm able to be happy and to be with all of you and carry my story. And I want to thank you for having me speak.